Jace Morrow had just finished bolting the last plasma seal on a leaking coolant pipe when the tremor hit. The floor beneath his boots vibrated with the kind of precision that only corporate cruisers carried, the heavy, deliberate hum of engines tuned for intimidation, not efficiency. He didn't look up right away, not until the shadows fell across the maintenance hatch, not until the telltale clink-clank of armored boots interrupted the usual background hum of Kalis Station's lower quadrant. Jace sighed, wiped a streak of grease across his already filthy shirt, and finally glanced up, squinting into the harsh overheads. The woman standing over him didn't belong here. Her obsidian armor gleamed with nano polish, a silver sigil pulsing faintly at her breastplate, the mark of an arbiter. Corporate enforcement elite. Her helmet visor darkened to opaque black as she addressed him. Jace Morrow, biological descendant of Arlen Morrow, claimant of Inheritance Clause 9. Beta Zeta, you are hereby summoned. Jace blinked. What? The arbiter didn't blink, probably couldn't in that helmet. Succession protocol has been initiated. You are to report to Ganymede Prime for immediate confirmation as executor of the Halcyon Accord. I think you've got the wrong guy, Jace said, standing slowly. He was tall, lean in that wiry way people who lived around reactor cores tended to be, with shaggy brown hair and the kind of jawline that promised charm but delivered sarcasm. I fix thermal valves and unclog sewage converters. My entire net worth is stuffed in my left boot. The arbiter didn't react. Instead, she held out a gleaming data rod. A flicker of light and a hologram activated, displaying a seal that looked more like a living creature than a legal form. It twisted mid-air symbols, shifting into a strange ancient script. Genetic succession verified, the arbiter said. You are the sole surviving heir of Arlen Morrow, founder of the Halcyon Accord. As per treaty law, your presence is now required. Transport is prepped. I don't even own a toothbrush, Jace muttered. You will be provided one, she said flatly. And just like that, he was dragged away from the only life he knew. 3 hours later, Jace found himself in the sterile luxury of a corporate shuttle, staring out the viewport at the stars streaking by. His boots still reeked of coolant, and his hands were stained with decades of recycled air and cheap soap. He hadn't even gotten to say goodbye to his bunkmate, though to be fair, their last argument over noodle rations probably didn't warrant a farewell. What the hell is the Halcyon Accord, he asked aloud. The shuttle's AI answered in a friendly, unsettlingly cheerful tone. The Halcyon Accord is a peace and trade alliance encompassing 7 systems originally brokered by Arlen Morrow during the interstellar collapse. Its current assets include diplomatic channels, rare mineral rights, and approximately 800 billion credits in resource bonds. Jace stared. Okay, but why me? You are the last living bloodline descendant of Arlen Morrow, the AI chirped. Under Succession Clause 9 Beta Zeta, you inherit not only legal control of the Accord, but also all pending treaty arrangements and existing political obligations. Obligations, Jace asked warily. Correct. As of 1 week ago, you are bonded by treaty marriage to Commander Vilix Soren of the Viary Dominion. Jace blinked. Wait, hold on. Married treaty marriage, the AI clarified helpfully. Commander Soren is the military representative of the Viary Dominion, a warrior caste species with whom your grandfather forged a blood pact. Upon his passing, the partnership passes to you. He slumped back into his seat, brain short-circuiting. Does this Vilix know about this? The AI paused. She is aware. Her response included 2 arbitration challenges, 3 formal objections, and 1 attempted duel by proxy. Fantastic, Jace muttered. Ganymede Prime loomed ahead, a monolithic station carved into the shell of an ancient moon, bristling with antenna arrays, docking rings, and neon-lit promenades. As the shuttle docked, Jace tried not to fidget. He still hadn't changed clothes, and his shirt had a suspicious oil stain, shaped vaguely like a cat. They didn't even give him a minute to freshen up. The escort led him straight into the central chamber of Ascension, a ridiculous name for what looked like a boardroom mashed together with a cathedral. The floor shimmered with plasma-tinted glass, and floating glyphs hovered in the air, updating themselves in real time with trade data from across the sector. Jace squinted against the glimmering displays, and then he saw her. Vilix Soren stood at the far end of the room, flanked by guards in matte black armor. She was tall, at least 7 feet, and built like someone who could crush spaceships with her biceps. Her skin was a deep indigo flecked with bioluminescent markings, her silver-white hair tied back in a braid laced with small metal rings. Her eyes, cold pale violet, narrowed the moment they locked onto him. This, she said icily, is the Morrow heir. Jace attempted a smile. Hi. Yeah, I'm Jace. I think there's been some kind of error, she snapped. A miscalculation. Perhaps a cosmic joke. Well, I was going to say misunderstanding, but cosmic joke's not bad. Her gaze raked over him with a mixture of disdain and disbelief. You smell like antifreeze. I prefer blue-collar charm. She stepped forward, circling him like a predator, examining a curious insect. Her voice was low, tightly controlled. You are untrained, soft, unarmed. I could break you in half. Probably, Jace agreed. But wouldn't that void the treaty? I mean, I haven't even unpacked yet. Her eyes flared briefly. She turned to the Arbiter AI, which had manifested in the form of a floating sphere of white light. This bond cannot be annulled. Negative, the AI intoned. Per Vayari custom and accord law, the bond must be maintained for one galactic cycle, approximately 1 Earth standard year. Valix turned back to Jace, her jaw tight. 1 year, she repeated. With you. Look on the bright side, he said. You've already got the knife. I've got unparalleled enthusiasm. She didn't laugh. Not even a twitch. I will not share quarters with him. Joint proximity is required for treaty stability, the AI responded. Adjacent suites have been assigned. Jace gave her a helpless shrug. I snore. Might work in your favor if you're trying to assassinate me in my sleep. I don't assassinate, she replied coolly. I challenge. As the meeting broke up and security drones escorted him toward his quarters, Jace caught her watching him again. Not just with fury, but with calculation. Like someone deciding whether to fight, flee, or tolerate. And despite the panic swirling in his gut, despite the fact that she could probably crush him into paste with her pinky toe, something in her intensity lit a spark of curiosity in him. This wasn't just politics. This wasn't just inheritance. This was going to be the most dangerous year of his life. And maybe, just maybe, the most interesting. The executive suite assigned to Jace was a far cry from the maintenance bunk he'd grown up in. Everything gleamed. Glass walls shimmered with adaptive privacy filters, the floor responded to voice commands, and the bed could probably launch escape pods if asked nicely. He stood awkwardly in the center of the room, trying to figure out if the wall console was a shower or some sort of interrogation unit. It whirred softly and spritzed something floral that immediately made him sneeze. Great, he muttered, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his still oil-stained shirt. Came here broke, and now I'm allergic to wealth. He hadn't unpacked yet, mostly because all he had was a half-empty duffel bag, a few spare tools, and a slightly melted photo of his mom that he kept in a sandwich bag. The door chimed. Jace flinched. Come in, he said cautiously. The doors hissed open, and Valix Soren walked in like she owned the station and had personally crushed the last person who suggested otherwise. She'd changed from her combat gear into what he could only assume was Vayari formal wear, sleek matte armor fitted close to her body with elegant silver etching that glowed faintly when she moved. Her hair was down now, cascading over her shoulder like liquid ice. Jace straightened and tried to remember how breathing worked. We need rules, she said without preamble. Hi, nice to see you again. I like what you've done with the hair. Her expression didn't change. First rule, you do not enter my quarters without clearance. Sounds reasonable. Second, you do not speak on behalf of the Accord without briefing. Also reasonable, though it might help if someone explains what the Accord actually is. Third, she paused, eyeing him with distaste. You will train. Jace blinked. Train. You are now the executor of a political and economic alliance spanning 7 systems. Your survival reflects on all of us. You must at least learn not to die. Wow, Jace said. That's a pretty low bar. I expect you to meet it. I'm flattered. Her eyes narrowed. Your sarcasm is not appreciated. It's a survival mechanism. She folded her arms. You won't survive long if you use it in front of the Krizari delegation. They view humor as a declaration of dominance. Well then, he said with a nervous grin, guess I'll just stare at my shoes and pray. Something flickered in her eyes then. Not quite amusement, but maybe the ghost of it. Or indigestion. Hard to say. She moved closer enough for Jace to feel the temperature drop a few degrees. This is not a joke to me, Executor Morrow. You represent more than yourself. He met her gaze and to his own surprise didn't flinch. I didn't ask for this, he said, and I sure as hell don't know how to be in charge of anything. But if I have to fake it to keep the whole thing from falling apart, I will. Just don't expect me to become someone else overnight. There was a long pause. Vilix tilted her head slightly, studying him, like a puzzle missing half its pieces. Then perhaps she said slowly, "We will begin with early mornings." Early? What now? Combat basics, strategy, etiquette. You will rise at first cycle bell. Jace groaned. So not only am I stuck in a political marriage, I also get boot camp at 5 a.m. You're welcome. And with that, she left. The next morning was every bit as brutal as promised. Vilix met him in the training chamber, an enormous arena with gravity-variable flooring and walls that could simulate nearly any battlefield. She was already sparring with 3 drones when he arrived, moving like a dancer who'd replaced grace with destruction. Her strikes were precise, fluid, elegant. Every blow calculated to kill. Jay stood off to the side in gym clothes, 3 sizes too big, holding a practice staff like it might explode. "Begin," she said without looking at him. "I'd rather not. Begin," she repeated. Okay, he muttered, raising the staff. She lunged. He yelped, stumbled, flailed, and somehow managed to block the first strike. More by accident than design. "Good reflexes," she said. "Poor form, thanks. I try to be mediocre in all areas." The second strike disarmed him in half a second. By the 5th, he was on his back, gasping and staring at the overhead lights. She stood over him, expression unreadable. "I think I saw my life flash before my eyes," he wheezed. "It was mostly cafeteria food and engine grease. You need to condition your stance. Your feet are too close." "I didn't realize I had feet. My spine's currently filing for divorce." Vilix offered him a hand, hesitated, then took it back. "You'll get stronger," she said. "You sound almost hopeful. I prefer competent allies to dead ones." Touching. Over the next week, the pattern repeated. Morning training, afternoon diplomacy, late-night political briefings that made Jace feel like his brain was being boiled in its own panic. Vilix remained cold, efficient, and merciless. But she also showed up, every day. She corrected his form, explained complex interstellar treaties, tossed him snacks during late-night logistics simulations, and just once, he caught her watching him train with an expression that wasn't quite annoyance. Maybe it was pride, or curiosity, or indigestion again. He still wasn't sure. Then came the first crisis. A shipment of rare elemental cores bound for the Arcadian League had been seized by rogue traders. The Accord's reputation was on the line. And suddenly Jace found himself standing in front of a delegation of 7 species, trying to explain why he wasn't a complete disaster. "They're testing you," Vilix murmured beside him, her voice low. "Stand your ground. They're 15 feet tall and breathe acid. Metaphorically." "Oh, good. That makes me feel so much better." And yet, he did it. Stumbling, improvising, sweating buckets, but he did it. And when the meeting ended with a reluctant agreement instead of a declaration of war, Vilix looked at him like he'd done something genuinely unexpected. "Not bad," she said. "I'm not dead," he replied. "Progress." That night, Jace found a package outside his door. Inside was a set of reinforced gloves, sleek, durable, custom fit. No note, but the box bore a Vyari insignia. He smiled. Maybe she wasn't so terrifying after all. Maybe she was starting to see him. Not as a mistake, but as something more. Jace woke with the strange sensation of having survived something. His back ached, his arms felt like lead, and he was pretty sure his left ankle had started a rebellion against the rest of his body. But he was alive, and that was saying something. He groaned and swung his legs over the edge of the bed, flexing sore fingers. The reinforced gloves sat on his nightstand where he'd placed them carefully the night before. A gift, no matter how quietly delivered. The door chimed. He expected a summons, maybe another death-defying council session. Instead, the AI voice chirped. "Commander Soren requests your presence. Training bay, immediately." Jace flopped backward onto the mattress. "Of course she does," he muttered to the ceiling, "because nothing says rest day like getting annihilated before breakfast." By the time he arrived, Valix was already mid-duel with a training drone that looked suspiciously like one of the more annoying trade ministers. She moved like a storm fluid, calculated, utterly merciless. Jace paused by the entrance, mesmerized by the way she turned violence into choreography. When she noticed him, she deactivated her blade and strode toward him, barely out of breath. "You're late." "I'm standing," he said, "which is better than yesterday." "Good," she said, and tossed him a small data pad. "Read this." He squinted at the screen. "Vyari. Marital protocols, treaty-based bonding ceremonies," she corrected. "We are expected to perform one. Soon." Jace blinked. "Wait, you mean like an actual wedding?" "It is symbolic," she said stiffly. "For the public. For interfaction relations." "Oh, good. Symbolic. Nothing weird about having to fake marry the woman who's already tried to dislocate my shoulder 4 times this week." She arched an eyebrow. "You'll need to learn Vyari customs, gestures, phrases. Her lips twitched. "You'll be expected to speak the rite of unity. Can't I just nod politely and not die? You'll offend half the Dominion." Jace groaned. "Okay, fine. What's the first phrase?" Valix cleared her throat. "Eshad voran satelarin." He tried to repeat it, failed miserably. "That was, I taste like regret," she said. "Oh no." Her mouth twitched again. Jace wasn't sure, but it might have been the beginnings of a smile. After 2 hours of pronunciation practice and cultural etiquette drills, he flopped onto a bench panting. "Are you sure this isn't secretly a punishment? It's diplomacy," she replied, as if those two things were the same. The ceremony took place 3 days later in the Great Hall of Unity, a cavernous chamber shaped like a spiral shell, with tiers of guests watching from all sides. Delegates from every major alliance faction had gathered dressed in ceremonial garb, whispering with mild scandal and sharp curiosity. Jace stood beside Valix at the center platform, encased in a formal robe so heavy it could double as emergency shielding. His collar itched, his heart thundered, and beside him Valix was the embodiment of control, regal glowing in iridescent armor, trimmed with woven metals. Her hair was braided in ceremonial loops, each one marked with gleaming rings. They looked to the casual observer like a perfectly matched pair. Only Jace knew the truth. He had no idea what he was doing. The rite of unity began. The officiant chanted in the Vyari tongue. Jace did his best to mimic the sacred phrases he'd practiced. There were several awkward pauses. At one point, he accidentally said something that made 3 elder warriors snort into their ceremonial mugs. But he made it through. When it came time to place the ceremonial crest on Valix's shoulder, his hand trembled, but she didn't move away. Her expression was unreadable, but she let him do it. And when she turned to face him, those violet eyes locked with his, not in hatred or contempt, but something more layered. Wariness, yes, but something else. Curiosity, tension, the sense of standing at the edge of a cliff waiting to fall. The ceremony ended with polite applause and restrained cheers. The AI cameras captured every moment. News feeds would broadcast it to all corners of the Accord by morning. They were officially bound, or at least symbolically. Later that night, Jace wandered back to his quarters in a daze. He'd barely taken off the robe when the door chimed again. Valix stepped inside without waiting for permission. "You did well," she said, her voice as close to kind as he'd ever heard it. "I managed not to puke," he replied, calling it a win. She studied him for a moment, and then something surprising happened. She removed the crest from her shoulder and held it out to him. "For your room," she said. "It's tradition." Jace took it with both hands, unsure what to say. The crest was warm, heavier than he expected, etched with Vyari script. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I know." He hesitated. "Why did you?" Valix's jaw flexed. "Because we're being watched. Because appearances matter. Because you did not embarrass me." Jace smiled. "Well, high praise from my favorite terrifying warrior." She gave him a look. "I am the only terrifying warrior you know." "I didn't say you weren't." A beat of silence. Then she turned to leave, but paused at the threshold. "The crest is not just for decoration," she said. "It is a vow of protection." Jace's voice softened. "Whose protection?" Her eyes flicked to him. "Yours." And then she was gone. The next day brought another challenge. Trade delegates from the Talari Combine had arrived, 3 insectoid nobles with translucent carapaces and a shared brainwave link that allowed them to finish each other's sentences. They were also notoriously difficult to negotiate with. Jace was supposed to host them for a diplomatic dinner. He showed up 10 minutes early, memorized 5 greetings, and nervously fiddled with his jacket collar until Valix arrived. She took one look at him and said, "You buttoned that wrong." He looked down. "How can you even tell it's symmetrical? Not to the Talari. They read vertical symmetry as aggression." "Oh, great. So I've just challenged them to a duel with my shirt." She sighed and stepped forward, adjusting the buttons with quick, practiced hands. Her fingers brushed his chest, and for a split second, the room felt smaller, quieter, charged. Jace stared at her. She didn't move away immediately. "You're surprisingly good at dressing me," he said. "I've dressed warriors for battle." "Well, this might be one." They stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Then the door opened, and the Talari entered, ending the moment. Dinner was a blur of cryptic phrases, chittering voices, and exotic sauces that may or may not have been still moving. Jace stumbled once, but Valix seamlessly translated. When a cultural misunderstanding nearly derailed the whole evening, she stepped in, backing his words, explaining his intent, and subtly guiding him through disaster. By the end of the meal, the Talari nobles had agreed to renew trade routes for another cycle. After they left, Jace leaned back in his chair and exhaled. "I owe you." "You owe yourself," Valix said. "You are learning." He looked at her. "Do you really believe that?" She didn't answer immediately. Then softly, "Yes." Jace smiled, warmth blooming in his chest. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was the wine. Or maybe it was the way she was looking at him, like the cliff edge wasn't so terrifying anymore. "Valix," he said almost without thinking. "Why did you become a warrior?" She blinked. The question clearly caught her off guard. "My people value strength. That's not a reason. That's a rule." A pause. Then quieter. "Because when I was young, someone told me I was weak, and I wanted to prove them wrong." Jace's voice softened. "You did." She looked away. "It doesn't always feel that way." He wanted to say something comforting, something honest. But all he could do was reach across the table and gently tap the crest she'd given him the night before. "You protect everyone else," he said. "But who protects you?" Valix stared at him. And for the first time since they'd met, she didn't have an answer. The station lights had dimmed to their night cycle setting, casting soft glows along the corridor walls as Jace paced outside the training bay. He could still hear the rhythmic hums and sharp bursts of kinetic impacts from within, the unmistakable sound of Valix in full form. He wasn't spying exactly. He just happened to be walking by. For the 4th night in a row, the wall panels shimmered, revealing a glimpse of the combat chamber through the one-way transparent alloy. Valix was a blur of violet and silver, her blades slicing arcs of plasma light through the air as she moved with lethal grace. Every motion was precise, measured, beautiful, and completely terrifying. Jace watched in silence, heart thudding. She wore only her tactical training suit, form-fitting, sleeveless, slick with sweat. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsed in time, with her breathing lighting her like some kind of war goddess made real. "You do realize these walls are reflective at night," she said suddenly without breaking her rhythm. Jace flinched. "Oh, right. I was just checking to see if you needed—" "I'm not thirsty." He rubbed the back of his neck, already retreating. "Cool, great. I'll just—" She appeared at the doorway before he could finish, wiping sweat from her brow with a cloth. Her violet eyes narrowed slightly, but not with anger. Curiosity, maybe, or amusement. "You don't sleep much," she observed. Jace shrugged. "I've been busy studying. There's a 3-volume packet on intersystem tax zoning that keeps trying to kill me. Sounds dangerous, almost as much as a plasma blade to the face." Something like a smile tugged at the edge of her mouth. "And yet you still watch me train." "Well, you're good at it," he said. "Like really good." Valix arched an eyebrow. "Is this flattery or assessment?" Jace hesitated. "Both." That did it. The tiniest quirk of her lips. A smirk. "Victory." She tossed him a training staff. "Then prove you've been watching." What come? Spar with me. He caught the staff awkwardly. Valix, the last time we sparred, I ended up with a bruise shaped like a vending unit, then learned to block. You say that like it's a setting I can toggle on. But she was already back in position, waiting. Jace sighed and stepped into the ring, gripping the staff tighter. The first few moves were clumsy. He dodged too early, overcommitted, and nearly tripped over his own foot. Valix didn't strike him outright, just parried, nudged, guided him with subtle, punishing grace. Too tense, she said. Maybe because you keep swinging at my head. Your footwork's improving. You mean I'm not on my face yet? That is an improvement. Their staffs clashed again, harder this time. Sparks lit the space between them. Sweat beaded at Jace's temples. Then with a twist, he feinted left, reversed, and tapped her hip. She froze, looked down, then up. Jace beamed. Valix tilted her head. Lucky. Effective. Their eyes locked. The tension was different now, not the sharp electricity of combat, but something softer, slower, warmer. Valix stepped closer, close enough that Jace could see the silver threads in her hair and the faint pattern of old scars beneath her skin markings. She reached up, then stopped. Her hand hovered beside his cheek. He didn't move. You're improving, she said quietly. You're making me want to. That hung between them for a moment, fragile, exposed. Then the comm panel blared. Executor Morrow, report to the diplomatic chamber. Priority 1. Valix stepped back, all trace of softness vanishing. Let's go. The chamber was already packed when they arrived. Screens displayed intercepted footage of a damaged convoy drifting near the border of the outlier belt ships, marked with Accord insignia, now surrounded by unknown vessels. Jace's blood went cold. What is this, Raiders, said Counselor Lorne, a beetle-eyed diplomat from the Midari colonies. Not just pirates, military-grade equipment, coordinated strike patterns. Could it be a false flag, Jace asked. A competitor, Valix, stepped forward, arms folded. If it is, they're masking their comms with Dominion encryption. That's not a coincidence. Lorne nodded. We believe it's the Crimson Shade. The name silenced the room. The Crimson Shade were ghost stories among traders, a mercenary fleet rumored to be made of exiles and ex-military war criminals, infamous for scorched earth tactics and disappearing without a trace. They're demanding a meeting, Lorne said. With you, Jace squeaked. Valix's jaw tensed. They're baiting him. It doesn't matter, Lorne snapped. This isn't a choice. We need to protect our shipping lanes. Jace felt the pressure bearing down like a collapsing hull. Where's the meeting? Docking Bay 9. 1 hour. When the time came, Jace stood in the center of the bay, surrounded by guards, his heart trying to punch its way out of his chest. Valix was beside him, armored and grim, her blade already humming at her hip. A single vessel descended, sleek, angular, blood red. From the shadows emerged the Crimson Shade's emissary, a tall, sharp-featured man with silver implants running across his temples and a grin like a wolf in a diplomat's suit. Executor Morrow, he purred. An honor. You have my ships, Jace said. We have collateral. You have something we want in return. Valix's eyes narrowed. Name it, the commander, the emissary said with a smirk. We want her. Jace stiffened. What? She's Vayari, a strategic asset, valuable to many interested parties. Valix stepped forward, blade half drawn. Try, the emissary chuckled. Or you can transfer the mineral rights to the Hades Crescent. Your choice. Those supply 17 colonies, Jace said. Then it seems your priorities are complicated. Something shifted in Valix's stance. She didn't flinch, but Jace saw her shoulders tense. They expected him to fold, to trade someone for security. He looked at her, at the person who'd trained him, shielded him, challenged him, and saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, like she expected him to offer her up. So he said, no. The emissary blinked. Excuse me, you don't get her, and you don't get the Crescent. You're going to return the convoy and disappear before I make sure every ship in this system knows your exact coordinates. The silence was immediate. Then Valix said, voice low, you just painted a target on your back, I know, Jace said, but I'm tired of being polite. The emissary's grin sharpened. We'll remember this, good Valix growled. So will we. They left without another word. That night, Jace returned to his quarters. He was still wired, adrenaline fizzing through his system. He didn't know if he'd just saved lives or started a war. The door chimed. Violet stepped in. Without armor, without ceremony. "I heard what you said," she murmured. "I meant it." She looked at him, really looked. "I thought you might trade me. Then you don't know me at all." For once, she didn't have a reply. So Jace took a step forward. "You're not a weapon," he said quietly. "You're not a bargaining chip. You're you. And I don't want a position that requires me to forget that." Valix's voice was barely a whisper. "You confuse me. Join the club." She didn't leave. He didn't move. Something hung in the air between them, charged and unspoken. And then very softly she said, "Good night, Jace." It was the first time she'd used his name. He didn't sleep for hours. Jace dreamed of fire. Not metaphorical fire, not the kind that burned in speeches or behind someone's eyes. Actual flames screaming through a corridor, licking the edges of a control panel while alarms howled and air thinned into nothing. And in the middle of it all stood Valix, blood on her temple, fighting off faceless enemies as the walls collapsed around her. He woke with a gasp. The lights in his quarters flickered from low sleep mode to a warmer amber glow. The AI's voice came softly. "You have a morning briefing in 30 minutes. Jace groaned and sat up. The nightmare clung to him like static. It wasn't just a dream. It felt like a warning. He dressed quickly, tossing on a clean shirt, still slightly wrinkled, and ran a hand through his hair in a futile attempt at order. He looked like someone playing dress-up in authority's closet, but at least he smelled less like engine oil today. Valix was already in the briefing room when he arrived. She stood with her arms crossed, analyzing a tactical projection. Her expression was tight eyes, scanning columns of data with surgical precision. "Morning," Jace offered. "You're late. I had a vision of doom." "But yeah, traffic." She didn't laugh, but her shoulders relaxed a little. They were alone, just the two of them, in Axis, the Accord's ever-watchful AI. The hollow screen displayed an outline of merchant convoys, trade routes, and a blinking red marker near the Andrus Belt. Jace frowned. "That's the mining zone near Sargon 5, where the Crimson Shade disappeared after the last threat Valix confirmed. Surveillance picked up movement. Stealth ships, no markings. Think it's them, I'd bet my second blade." Jace looked closer. The mining facilities were small but critical, producing rare superconductive elements used in nearly every starship core in the sector. "Let me guess," he said. "We can't afford to lose them. We can't afford for them to be a target." Jace exhaled. "So we send security already done. But it's not enough. If they're preparing for something bigger..." Her voice trailed off, but the implication hung thick in the air. They'd been warned once. Next time it might not be a trade hostage negotiation. It might be full-scale assault. Jace stared at the display. "I need to talk to the board." "You need to convince the board," she corrected. "Most of them still see you as a placeholder." "And what do you see?" She met his eyes and something shifted in her face. "I see someone learning how to lead. The hard way. That makes two of us." The board meeting went about as well as a hull breach. The chamber was packed, 23 seats arranged in a semicircle, each filled with a representative from the Accord's core factions. Jace stood at the central dais, palms sweating as he explained the threat, the surveillance, the need for immediate coordinated defense. When he finished, a silence settled over the room like dust. Then came the scoffs. "The Shade is a myth," said Ambassador Tellon of the Exari Republic, brushing imaginary lint from his sleeve. "You expect us to divert resources based on rumors. We've had 3 confirmed encounters," Jace said. "Encounters easily fabricated." Tellon sneered. "Fear is a powerful political tool." "The Crimson Shade nearly murdered hundreds of my people," said a rough voice from the far end. Cura Dale of the Norn Syndicate. Her left arm was cybernetic. Her right eye burned like a furnace. "I don't need more proof. I want retribution." "That's not what I'm asking for," Jace replied. "I'm asking for unity." A ripple of dismissive murmurs passed through the room. Then Valix stood. She wasn't scheduled to speak. She didn't care. In the Vayari Dominion, she said, voice like tempered steel, "We do not wait for enemies to strike before we raise our shields. We do not argue over politics while our homes burn." Her presence silenced them. Even Tellon shifted in his chair. The executor has faced threats none of you have, she continued, and stood his ground. I was there. I watched him risk his life when it would have been easier to surrender. If you refuse to act because of pride or convenience, then you are the danger. Jace stared at her stunned. The silence broke slowly, this time with nods. Reluctant, but growing. In the end, it passed. Not unanimously, but enough. Emergency reinforcements would be deployed to the Andrus belt. As the chamber emptied, Jace remained behind, still processing the whiplash of success. Valix approached quietly. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yes, I did. Why? She paused. Because you're not alone, he smiled. You keep surprising me. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes unreadable. Good. That night, the Andrus surveillance feeds went dark. By morning, the entire mining facility was gone. Not destroyed, not captured. Gone. Vanished without a trace, like it had been scooped out of space itself. Jace stood frozen in the control chamber, staring at the blank data. No debris, axis confirmed. No thermal signatures. Just absence. Valix's jaw clenched. This was a test. Jace turned to her. Of what? Of how we'd respond. Of how much they can take before we react. He ran a hand through his hair. And we failed. She didn't deny it. Suddenly alarms blared across the station. Red light bathed the corridor outside. The AI's voice echoed across the deck's containment breach. Reactor instability detected. Please evacuate. Jace ran Valix close behind. They reached the central reactor hub just as emergency doors sealed behind them. Inside, chaos reigned. Engineers shouting, plasma conduits sparking, flames dancing across the far wall. The primary coolant loop had ruptured, pressures spiking. Someone sabotaged this, Valix growled. This isn't an accident. Jace's eyes scanned the chaos, the growing heat, the countdown timers on auxiliary systems. He didn't hesitate. He dove into the maintenance crawl space, ignoring the searing metal against his palms, climbing toward the manual override valve near the primary loop. Jace, Valix called. What are you doing? If I can redirect the flow, we can vent it into the emergency core. You'll burn alive. I've been through worse plumbing. He gritted his teeth and twisted the first valve. Steam hissed past his shoulder, burning the edge of his collar. One more. Just one more. The system groaned as the pressure dropped. Containment stabilized. And then a sharp jolt of energy threw him backward. He landed hard. The next thing he knew, Valix was kneeling beside him, gripping his shoulders. You reckless, her voice broke her eyes wide with something he'd never seen there before. Fear. I'm okay, he coughed, just a little toasted. Her hands ran over his arms, checking for burns. Her voice was low, urgent. You could have died. I didn't. I could have lost you. That stilled him. Her breath caught. Her eyes searched his face. And then softly, like a confession, she said, You matter more than you realize. Jace's heart thudded. To the accord. To me. And there it was. The thing they'd been circling since the first accidental insult. Since the first lesson. Since the crest, the sparring, the shared silences, and hesitant laughter. He reached up and brushed his fingers against hers. I'm not just here because of bloodlines, he whispered. I know. I'm here because you make me want to stay. She didn't respond, not with words. She leaned forward slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't, and when their lips met, it wasn't fire. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet, steady, real. When they pulled apart, Valix rested her forehead against his. You're still an idiot, she whispered. Yeah, he said, but I'm your idiot now. She smiled, and for once it reached her eyes. The aftermath of the sabotage was complicated. The reactor core had stabilized barely. Dozens of engineers worked around the clock to bring full systems back online. Repairs would take weeks. But the bigger concern wasn't the damage, it was the message. Someone had planned this, knew where to hit, knew how to cut deep, and they'd come terrifyingly close to succeeding. Jace sat in his office, hands steepled under his chin, eyes fixed on the security feed cycling through dozens of angles. Valix paced nearby, her expression carved from stone, silent as gravity. Any leads he asked, though, he already knew the answer. No trace, she said. The saboteurs were in and out before the alarms tripped. They wiped the logs. Inside job, almost certainly. and whoever it was knew Vayari protocols. He looked up. That narrows it down to, what, a few million people? She stopped pacing. Her eyes were colder than usual. We're being surrounded, not by armies, by influence, sabotage, misinformation, infiltration. They don't need to defeat us in battle if they can make us destroy ourselves from the inside. Jace leaned back and rubbed his eyes. How do you fight that? Valix didn't answer. Because they both knew the truth. You couldn't. Not with swords, not with fleets, but maybe with something else. The next day brought a diplomatic summit with the Oran Cluster, one of the Accord's most skeptical members and one of the most vital. Their jump gate network made them the linchpin of intersystem travel. If they left, the Accord trade would collapse within weeks. Jace had prepped all night. Valix had trained with him, not just military drills anymore. Speechcraft posture, reading body language, answering questions with silence when silence said more than words. Her methods were intense and sometimes deeply humiliating, but they worked. And so he stood before the Oran delegation in a quiet, echoing hall and gave a speech he didn't read from a pad. He spoke about unity, about how fear feeds division, about how no system, no matter how strong, survives alone. He didn't sound like a politician. He sounded like someone who'd nearly died to protect people he hadn't known a month ago, and that somehow was enough. The Oran agreed to remain in the Accord for now. It wasn't a victory, not really, but it was a breath. After the summit, Jace returned to his quarters mentally exhausted. He dropped into his chair, kicked off his boots, and leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. The door chimed. "Come in," he said without looking. Valix stepped inside softer than usual. Her armor had been replaced with a simple tunic and trousers, dark, unadorned, functional. She looked real. "I saw the speech," she said. "I was there," he replied. "You didn't stutter. I did in my soul." She smirked, but there was warmth in it. Then after a pause, she said, "I brought something." She held up a data pad and handed it to him. The screen displayed a schematic, a shuttle modified and lean built for stealth and speed. Jace frowned. "What's this an idea? Our surveillance isn't working. Our data is being fed lies. We need eyes they can't corrupt. You want to build this? I want us to build it. You and me, off the books." Jace stared at her, the weight of that statement settling slowly. "You trust me with this?" Valix met his gaze. "I trust you with everything." He swallowed. "That's big. So is the risk." He smiled. "Then let's get to work." And they did. For days they disappeared between shifts into hangar bays, engineering sublevels, dark corridors where questions weren't asked. They scavenged parts, rerouted power sources, and rewrote system code. Jace's old mechanic instincts kicked him fast, and for the first time since all of this began, he felt completely in his element. Valix worked beside him, silent, focused, elegant, even when covered in grease and circuit shavings. They didn't talk much, but when they did, it mattered. Between assembling fusion cores and soldering hull reinforcements, they talked about their pasts. Jace told her about growing up in a supply depot where laughter was a survival tactic and meals came from cracked ration boxes. Valix told him about her training in the Dominion, how she was forged in a world where weakness was a death sentence, where she learned to never look back, never speak of fear, never show softness. "Do you miss it?" he asked one night as they installed the last of the navigation modules. "I miss believing in it," she said. Jace nodded. "I miss thinking I'd never be important." She glanced at him. "You're important to me." The words hit harder than any confession he'd heard. He looked up from the panel, surprised. That was honest. She didn't deny it. Instead, she stepped close, her voice low. "Jace, this thing between us, it complicates everything." "Then let it," he whispered. "Let it be complicated. Let it be real." She hesitated. Then she kissed him. It wasn't fierce like before. It was quiet, searching, a promise rather than a demand. And when they broke apart, neither of them moved away. "I don't know what comes next," she said. "We make it up," he replied. "Together." Later that night, the shuttle launched for the first time. No ceremony, no announcement. Just the two of them in the cockpit's sensors' silent engines, humming like a purr. They flew into the Andrus Belt, through asteroid fields, abandoned relay stations, forgotten war zones. And they found it. A signal. Buried beneath old comm frequencies, masked by debris fields encoded in Dominion war dialect. A message. The director lives. Jace froze. Valix's voice was quiet. What director? He didn't answer, because in his gut he already knew. This wasn't just sabotage, this was a resurrection, and someone very old, very dangerous, and very not dead wanted everything back. The signal kept looping, distorted but unmistakable. The director lives. Jace sat frozen in the pilot's chair of the stealth shuttle, eyes locked on the transmission as it flickered on the console. His heartbeat had slowed, not out of calm, but from the cold certainty that the message changed everything. Valix stood beside him, silent, tense. Her arms were folded, but her knuckles were white. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Do we know which director? Jace finally asked, already fearing the answer. Valix's voice was low. There's only one it could mean. Valen Wraith. The name hit like vacuum decompression. Valen Wraith, former director of the Halcyon Accord, presumed dead 5 years ago when his flagship exploded during a mutiny. His death had triggered the entire cascade of power shifts that eventually placed Jace by bloodline accident on the throne. Axis confirmed he was vaporized, Jace said, clinging to reason. He was clever enough to fake it, Valix replied, and paranoid enough to plan for it. Jace stood pacing the tiny confines of the shuttle. So he faked his death, waited for the Accord to rebuild, and now he wants it back. He's watching, testing us. Sabotage, disinformation, destabilization, classic Wraith doctrine. I thought he was a bureaucrat. He was a warlord who wore a suit. Jace exhaled hard. So what do? We find him before he decides to end the game. When they returned to Nexus Prime, they kept the discovery quiet. No alarms, no panic, just a plan. Valix coordinated with her most trusted security agents. Jace convened with Axis to deep dive sealed records, tracing encrypted command paths and old access codes that hadn't been used since the Wraith era. Each thread led them deeper into the shadows of the Accord abandoned outposts, forgotten allies, half-deleted files encoded with secrets no one was supposed to remember. And then they found it. A signal ping from a supposedly defunct relay station near the edge of the Grendel Expanse, a dead zone where no ships dared venture. The relay had been rerouted, buried under a ghost network running off pre-collapse infrastructure. Jace stared at the coordinates. That's where he's hiding. Valix nodded. And if he's hiding, he's also watching. We can't send a fleet. Then we go ourselves. You're not serious. I'm very serious. Suicidally serious. Then I'm going with you. They didn't argue. There was no time. Within hours, they were aboard the stealth shuttle again, cloaked and armed for infiltration. Nexus Prime would maintain radio silence for 48 hours. If they didn't return, they wouldn't come at all. As the shuttle slipped into the black haze of the expanse, everything grew quieter. Sensor ghosts blinked around them. Power signatures stuttered. Space here was broken thin, like stepping between dimensions. Then they saw it. A station small, jagged, clinging to a hunk of drifting rock. No lights, no beacons. Just a single pulse on a frequency only old Accord code could detect. Jace took the controls. We land quiet. No weapons. If he's in there, we don't scare him off. Valix checked her blade. And if he's not scared, then we run fast. The station interior was cold. Dust lay thick on the walls, though the air system still ran. Power flickered through cracked conduits. It felt like stepping into a grave. They moved slowly, flashlights cutting through the dark. And then in the central chamber, the lights snapped on. Jace froze. At the far end of the room, seated like a king, returning to his throne, was Valen Wraith. Older, scarred, one eye replaced with a glowing implant, but unmistakable. "Hello, Executor," he said, voice as smooth as it was dangerous. "You've been busy." Jace didn't speak. Neither did Valix. Not yet. "I watched you," Wraith continued, "fumble your way through councils, charm your way through failures. You were supposed to collapse under the weight of the Accord." "I didn't," Jace said. "No," Wraith mused. "You grew. And she," he turned to Valix, "still loyal, even when your leash was cut." Valix's hand hovered near her blade. Careful, Wraith said. This station's linked to a core trigger. Kill me and half the expanse detonates. What do you want? Jace asked. I want what's mine, Wraith snapped. I built the Accord. I controlled it. Then your bloodline meddled with succession protocols and stole my legacy. I didn't steal anything. I was dragged into this. Then give it back. Jace stepped forward. No. Wraith blinked. No, you faked your death, sabotaged your own house, sacrificed everything. And for what? To come back and demand your seat like a toddler who lost his toy? You insolent little, I've bled for this, Jace said, voice rising. I've earned their trust. I didn't take power. I deserved it. Not because of birthright, but because I never stopped fighting for it. Wraith stood slowly. Then fight for it now. His guards emerged from hidden alcoves, 6 of them armed and fast. Valix was faster. She was a blur of violet and steel, a whirling storm of precision and fury. Jace ducked behind the console using the distraction to access the station systems. Axis, he whispered through his comm implant. Ping the shuttle. Overload the relay. I need a blackout. Confirm, the AI responded. The lights died. Only Valix's glowing blade remained cutting arcs in the dark. Then a shot rang out. Jace turned just in time to see Valix stumble a searing line across her side. No, he shouted. Wraith laughed. You can't protect her. You're not a warrior. Jace stood, eyes blazing. I don't need to be. He activated the pulse. The room shuddered as magnetic feedback surged through the station, shorting every circuit and frying every implant. Wraith's guards dropped, screaming. Wraith stumbled, his cybernetic eye flickering wildly. Valix rose, clutching her side, blood streaking her armor. Jace caught her before she fell. You're okay, he said. You're okay. You idiot, she muttered. You pulled a pulse bomb inside a station. You would have done the same. I would have done it better. But she smiled, and then they turned to Wraith. He sat collapsed, one knee on the floor, glaring up with hatred. It's over, Jace said. You think this changes anything, Wraith growled. You'll never be me, good, Jace said. I'd rather be better. Valix stepped forward, blade raised. Wait, Jace said. She paused, surprised. He looked down at Wraith, then back at her. He wants to die a martyr. Let him rot in a cell instead. Valix considered that. Then she turned, deactivating her weapon. The message was clear. Jace Morrow didn't kill for power. He built it, and he'd fight to protect it. The return to Nexus Prime was met with silence, no fanfare, no celebration. Jace and Valix docked the stealth shuttle under a false registry to avoid attention. Wraith, unconscious and restrained in the medical bay, was placed under maximum level containment without public notice. For now, the truth would be sealed beneath layers of diplomatic secrecy, but word would spread. It always did. Inside the Accord's inner chambers, Axis processed the evidence they'd gathered: footage, relay signals, records of sabotage tied to Wraith's ghost network. It was enough to purge the rot from every level of the bureaucracy. And yet the victory felt quiet. Too quiet. Valix sat in the infirmary, her side wrapped in regrowth mesh, her expression unreadable. Jay stood nearby, arms folded, watching her with more worry than he could hide. You should be resting, he said. I heal faster when I'm upright. You also bleed faster when you pretend you're made of titanium. She glanced at him. Are you comparing me to a bulkhead, only the most elegant kind? Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, but not a rejection either. They stood like that for a long moment, neither sure how to begin the next part. Until finally she broke the silence. You spared him? I did. You had every reason not to. I know. Valix looked away. It's strange. I spent so long believing that strength was only proven in blood, in battles, in ending threats. And now she turned to face him. Now I think strength is knowing when not to. Jay stepped closer, his voice low. You taught me how to fight, how to stand up, how to survive. And you taught me how to stop surviving, she whispered, and start living. His breath caught. I used to believe love was weakness, she said. Something exploited, a danger. And now Valix reached up, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Her fingers lingered. Now I think it's the strongest armor I've ever worn. He smiled, stepping into her touch. You always say the most romantic things when you're covered in bandages. It's my way. She leaned in, and this time there was no hesitation. They kissed, not the sharp, desperate kind forged in adrenaline, but something slower, fiercer, like forging a bond that couldn't be broken by fire or betrayal or even war. When they broke apart, Jace rested his forehead against hers. "I don't want a treaty bond," he whispered. "I want a real one. With you." Valix's eyes softened. No laws, no contracts, just choice. Her hand tightened around his. "Then I choose you." Weeks passed. The accord stabilized. Wraith's conspirators were exposed. The Crimson Shade fragmented without his leadership. Systems once on the brink of secession recommitted, not because they feared the consortium, but because finally they believed in it. And in him. Jace Mara, once a nobody-wrenched jockey in a broken-down corner of the galaxy, was no longer just a figurehead. He was a leader, not perfect, but his own. He and Valix stood together on the observation deck one last time, watching the stars spin past. She wore ceremonial armor, now sleek, dignified, but adorned with the crest he had once placed on her shoulder in a fake ceremony that now felt like the most honest moment of his life. He wore something a little less wrinkled, but just as real. "You nervous?" he asked. "I've faced down orbital strikes," she said. "But standing in front of 5,000 diplomats—" "Yes," he chuckled. "Same. The official announcement would go out in an hour. The executor and the commander would step down from formal leadership roles, but remain as co-advisors. Together. Free. Untethered from titles bound by choice. They'd built something, but they wanted to live it. And each other." Valix turned to him, one hand resting lightly on his chest. "So what now?" Jace grinned. "Now we fly. No war councils, no succession codes. Just you, me, a quiet ship, and possibly some very spicy noodles from Sector 11. She raised an eyebrow. "Sector 11 noodles are dangerous." "You afraid of the noodles?" "Yes. Of you." She pulled him into a kiss. "Never." The stars called, and they answered together.